Call the meeting to order. I pledge
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
Twenty-one supervisors are present. Supervisors Grady and Kubicki are excused.
Citizen comments. Any citizen wish to speak? Any citizen wish to speak? Any citizen wish to speak? Seeing none, citizen comments are closed. I have no announcement right now. Supervisors' reports. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let everyone know, all my colleagues know, that this week, the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department, their leadership, the sheriff, the chief deputy, and Detective Kaluka are attending the ILETA conference, which is being held in St. Louis this year. I did have the pleasure of joining the group last night, briefly while at the conference. Specifically, ILETA stands for the International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association, and what I was in attendance for last night was their Emerson Hour, which is a feature of the program every year. It features 6 of ILETA's premier trainers that each speak for 9 minutes back-to-back, and they do that without any audio or visual cues. And really what they do is they command the attention of everybody in the room, and they're speaking about what stood out to them in the last year when it comes to training for law enforcement officers. How do not only our deputies here in Kenosha County, but folks from quite literally all over the world. There were police officers from the Ukraine that were even at this conference. How do they best serve their communities? So on behalf of the sheriff and his team, he wanted to thank this county board for their commitment, for our commitment to funding this continuing education for his department and our citizens and our constituents. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Per Supervisor Grady's request that I give an update every week or two on the Highway 50 construction project, I wanted to give a first update. May already see signs out there, the message boards, but they will be up this week if they aren't already. But the project is supposed to start Monday, March 25th. Highway will be open to traffic during construction. Traffic will be shifted through the crossovers to one side and reduced to one lane of traffic in each direction, in westbound and eastbound directions. There is a kickoff meeting scheduled for tomorrow, and I'm sorry I don't have a time for that, but the end of construction is anticipated at the end of August 2024. As I get more information, I will pass it on. I did want to give a quick update, too, on highways Q and Highway H. They pretty much affect Pleasant Prairie. Pleasant Prairie is doing some water main work on Highway H, but when that's done, there was a pre-construction meeting that was held on March 13th. Batterman was retained to do the construction management and consultant. And then it's scheduled to start, our work is scheduled to start the first week of June and completion to be done in August, by the end of August. Paving on Highway Q will depend on when the plants are open. Clement's best guess was it'll open mid-April, so they'll be paving towards the end of April on Highway Q. And that is it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Bashaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things real quick of note. One, Judiciary and Law did meet last week. I'm not going to belabor that, as you'll see that it seems to be the number one item on the agenda this evening. We have a number of items that we'll be addressing. Number two, Broadband Committee. We postponed our appointment this last month due to waiting for some RFPs to come in, so we've sent out requests for proposals to gain some insights of opportunities that may be addressed. As many know, especially in the northwestern part, the Paris area, through down into Bristol, We have a lot of orange and green lines that are being pulled through the ground right now. They are pulling fiber optic through those, and we'll be improving service through a large segment of the western portion of the community, but it will be some time before it goes much further. And then the last part is with regard to Paris Solar and the operation there. I believe I reported before that they do have panels or arrays on station. They have been delivering and will be continuing to deliver and bring them into the laydown yard as they prepare to start mounting the panels and taking that project forward. If you've driven by it any time in the last year, year and a half, you'll see that it is an expansive project. By rumor, or I'll call it fact, but rumor, that project south of the Racine County line is static as far as the number of units or panels that are going to be installed. However, the company has secured agreements north of the line now in Racine County. So if you like seeing solar panels in cornfields going on for miles and miles, anticipate it continuing to expand. Along with that, We Energy will be anticipating build out of a couple of gas-fired power plants to replace or completely back up the energy from solar. As we know, the sun does go down at times and they don't have power available, so they have to have a 100% redundancy for that occurrence. Additionally, once that occurs, the battery vault will be installed, and hopefully sometime this summer, the operation becomes powered and we can start gaining power off the grid. So, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nudo. An update for the PDEC. We had a meeting last week, Wednesday. The first part of the meeting was the UW extension update. They had gave a presentation by Director Larson, and a couple of the highlights from that. I can send a copy of the presentation if anybody wants it, let me know. But one of the things that's coming up right around the corner here is like a class or a program called Homegrown to work on developing entrepreneurship in the community. And tomorrow is the deadline for the RSVP to Savannah Myers, who's our community development coordinator. And so if anybody's interested in attending that, it's a one-day deal on April 3rd, so it would be before our meeting on that Wednesday in early April. I've certainly distributed within the people that I know out in western Kenosha County. The next thing that, it wasn't in the report, but I talked with VJ Pageant, our horticulturist, is that one of the concerns that we're closely watching is the spongy moth. We had an infestation last year in western Kenosha County, and it could spread if it continues to grow, if we have a drier spring, and if we don't control them in some way or another. So I've talked with him at length about that, and we've got a concern out in western Kenosha County. We're spot areas that we're keeping an eye on. And then thirdly, there's the Youth and Governance program is moving along. We've gotten 18 applications back. There was potentially maybe one or two others, but for sure we had 18. There is a total of 16 spots that would get filled with 2 alternates, so it really kind of times out with the number of applicants and the number of positions available. We do have several returning from last year as well to fill those positions. Interviews are going to be next week, and we have Supervisor Bashaw and Supervisor Franco helping with those interviews as well. We do have the part of the planning and development that we went through was talking about the floodplain ordinance. That will come up later on in the agenda here. And one thing to note on that is that this is the first reading of that. It requires 2. We do have a time constraint on that, so the next meeting that will be the second reading at is April 3rd. We need to make sure that we have a quorum there because there's a deadline in mid-April for that to be enacted. So that concludes my agenda, or my report.
Supervisor Stark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At our last Human Services Committee meeting, we passed 2 resolutions, which will be on the agenda tonight, and I'll discuss those further when we get to those items. We also received a presentation at the request of Supervisor Gearston on truancy. It was presented by Ron Rogers from the Division of Children and Family Services. If anyone wants a copy of that, please email me and I can get it forwarded to you. In short, the county does a lot of work in helping kids that are truants. We have a lot of great caseworkers that will work with children that are having trouble attending to school, getting to the root cause. And what we learned from the presentation is that once we make that contact and once we start working with the kids, we have a really good success rate of helping them with their school attendance. And also we learned that it's much easier to address if we can catch it earlier on. There's a lot of factors that contribute to truancy, but there's plenty of details, lots of facts, numbers, and graphs in the presentation. If anyone is interested, just reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Franco.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a correction for the record, it will be Supervisor Gashke and I who will be doing the YIG interviews. Thank you.
Any other supervisors? Any other supervisors? Seeing none, supervisor reports are closed.
New business, Resolution 108 from the Finance and Administration Committee, an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed 33 million general obligation bonds and/or promissory notes for the purchase of the Human Services Building. This passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Rose.
On behalf of the committee, I would move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Supervisor Gerstin. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. This is the initial resolution for the financing of the Human Services Building on 52nd Street. It requires a 3/4 vote, 18 votes to pass. The resolution is good for 5 years. If it isn't financed within that 5-year period, it will need to be renewed and another initial resolution passed. I don't anticipate that, but that is what the rule is, that 5 years is the required time. We would move in, or the county would move in the year 2026. It's currently under construction. Construction has begun recently, and it would be purchased, if all goes as planned, in the year 2031. This is the financing for that purchase in 2031. In other words, we lease for 5 years, beginning 2026, and in 31, we own it through this financing. It would have to come back for a second resolution that would need to be passed in order to complete that financing, which does require a majority vote, not a 3/4 vote. Current financing is taken care of in 2 ways. Number one, there's a grant that county received of over $9,800,000. The balance financed by BEAR. This, I say, would ultimately result in financing for the purchase by Kenosha County. Now, you might ask yourself, what happened to the $17 million estimate that was back in 2019, which a lot of people thought would be the current purchase price. That's not the case. And let me just explain here in detail. The 2019 figure was a soft figure based upon the numbers in that year. First of all, there's been a lot of inflation in the construction industry that accounts for a 60% increase. The building in 2019 was anticipated to be 130,000 square feet. This building is 147,000 square feet. Why? Because a more definite survey was done of the various departments moving in there, and it was thought that 147,000 was more accurate than the 130,000 anticipated in 2019. There's a contingency fund here of some $3 million, which was not included in the $17 million. Also not included were IT costs moving into the building, which is going to cost some $400,000, the estimate is. Furniture was not included at the time. It was determined that the current furniture in the current building would not be suitable for this building. So all of those things added up to what we put in the current bond, not to exceed $33 million. Doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to hit that. It could be a little less. But the items that I have suggested here, including the inflation of some 60% and a larger building, account for the larger cost today than anticipated in 2019, which I emphasize were soft numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gens.
Thank you. I listened to that, and part of it I agree with, but there's another part of me that really is quite annoyed by this. I understand inflation. I understand costs going up. But between soft and hard, when we make a bid on a project, I mean, we should know how many square feet we want. We should include furniture and IT. We should not be caught down the road having to make up, come up with almost double what the initial cost was. I think we missed this badly. I mean, we on this board argue about $50,000, $100,000. We're in the millions. I'm not going to vote against this, and I'm not advocating turning it around, but this is not good. This really, frankly, pisses me off that we could miss by this much, okay? Inflation, get it. Adding a few things here or there, but all of a sudden wanting all these extra square feet to the tune of, millions of dollars. And did we have a contingency built in up front in the initial bid? Who can answer that for me?
The answer is no.
We didn't.
Not a $3 million.
So we didn't think to have a contingency put in there on a project we were doing down the road when we knew costs could change. This, to me, is not good planning and a not good use of our taxpayers' money. We need the building. I'm going to go forward, but not good. Not good. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To piggyback on Supervisor Gens's information, cost escalation, also there was a vapor barrier had to be put down because of a dry cleaner that was there apparently they didn't know about, and that's to protect the future employees as well as future people who will be walking in that building from potentially any harm that could come from the dry cleaner contamination. City of Kenosha required an extra firewall to be put in that they didn't know about because it's considered to be two different locations inside one building. It also didn't include the site improvement, as well as, although we said IT, it also didn't include security. But please remember, this was done back in this was all signed in February of 2022. And it was the previous administration, both in Public Works as well as the county executive. The new Public Works Director and I had a discussion on this, and believe me, this is not going to fall through the cracks again, because I 100% agree with Supervisor Gens. All of this information should be included, all of it. When you're talking about it, hey, it's only $17 million to build new, but $16 million to rebuild what you have, I'm wondering if there wasn't a little bit of, hey, let's try to get this new building and we'll figure out what all the real costs are later type of attitude about it. So that has to stop right now. We cannot afford going forward and doubling the price of a building that whomever did it to begin with, and it was the original group. It was not Bear. Don't anyone point fingers at Bear or current administration. It was whoever started it before, just looked at it a certain way, and I guess we were all learning that we need to take better control of it, and we need to ask better questions, and we need to make sure everyone's tax dollars are being spent appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Redweski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to resoundingly echo the sentiments of Supervisors Gens and Nordigan. I wasn't here in 2017 to vote on a $17 million proposal, and even at that point, I would have wanted a lot of data to support that number. The amount of estimate that this was off and the number of items that were not included is egregious. And when I sat through that presentation at our last meeting, I was dumbfounded by how far off we were and how this could have gotten this far. So I will not be here when you have to vote on this resolution again, maybe in 6 years, but I certainly hope that this board keeps really close track of how this project is going and make sure it stays on track, because it is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable that it's this far off. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Bashaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not my intention to echo what's been said. It's my intention to amplify it. In private business, if a bid escalated by 200%, doubled, somebody would lose their job. Somebody would probably be canceling that bid and moving away from it. You can't budget this way. You can't manage and administrate this way. Somebody made an egregious error. Now, somebody, and I think Supervisor Nidwesky touched on it, it happened prior to this board, this administration, that this building was brought forward. It is needed for the county. So as Supervisor Gens said, I'm for the idea of. I think it's going to be very good for and very healthy for Kenosha County, and we need to take this action to build this new structure. However, we have to be more than aware that there's a cost overrun. It's a 200% of original cost. How does that happen? How do we not know we need furniture? How do we not know we have to move and relocate? Who managed this project? Who was responsible for this project? And the last statement I'll make is, when we go to take occupancy, what's the new bid going to be, and how much more are we going to have to allocate for it? Is it doubling again? Is it a train that's out of control, rolling down the track too fast without any rails around it whatsoever? How do we make sure this thing stays in check and does come in the way it's planned? Now, that said, I think the building's elegant. It looks wonderful. It's going to be, like I said, very, very beneficial for the county. If these numbers stay in play the way they are, I can support it. I don't agree that it's a 60% overrun just in inflation. Inflation was not 60% on this type of construction. It was substantial, but I can't blame it on that. Remediation of vapors, I'd like to know the actual price, if I could ask. Supervisor Nordigan, do we know the actual price for that remediation that was done?
Bid, I don't know that we got that in yet. Shelley?
Currently, it's estimated at $300,000 to $350,000. Currently, I think we are still awaiting bid results on that item.
So 1% of the overall?
Yeah.
Okay. Nominal. It doesn't explain the increase in any way, shape, or form. I understand we're trying to understand it, get our arms around it, not throwing stones at those that have picked up this project and are trying to move it forward. I'll tell you a personal story. We had a church, we bought a property, we intended to build a very large structure on it until everybody started putting their asks, their wants, their desires into it, and the structure became untenable, and we did not build it. At some point, we have to say what is critical to the operation, what do we have to have, how do we manage to mitigate the costs going forward, and make sure this project is executed as needed, not as wished for. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other supervisors? Supervisor Gens.
I have 2 points I'd like to make, now that I've had time to marinate a little bit.
I understand.
I would like to ask the chair, excuse me? I would like to
just go ahead.
I would like to ask the chair to require monthly financial reports to this board on this project.
Okay.
Thank you. The second thing I want to know is contingency. Do we have enough in contingency? Somebody answer me that question. Is the 3 million going to be enough, or do we need to, or do we need to up that? Patty? Somebody?
$3 million is 10% of the project cost. That is customary in a construction project, from what I understand.
Thank you. All right, I won't ask for more, but we're going to have to monitor this so that this doesn't balloon up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's easy for us to say, well, for our colleagues who are new to the board, I mean, they're certainly right in saying they weren't here for it. But for those of us who voted on this project originally, myself included, I need to be able to go back to my district, and I can't just tell my district, well, that was before, it was a different administration, it was different whoever. We need to know who was in charge of this project at the time that now we were off by, we were half the cost. Was it our previous public works director? Was it the previous county exec? I mean, who can answer that question? Because to just say, well, it was somebody, but we're going to make sure it didn't happen again, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. I've been a proponent of this project since the very beginning in 2018, when the project was killed, when it would have been moved to what is today my district, at the time would have been across the street from my district, in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, in the Brass neighborhood. And this board said absolutely not, it was too expensive. And so instead of it being in my district, I'm upset about that. I wish today it was still in my district. This board said, no, it's too expensive. We waited a year or two, we came back, and now it's double the cost. My constituents especially, and Supervisor Gashke's constituents especially, they were his constituents at the time, they deserve answers. Why were they denied this amazing project in our neighborhood, and it went to a different neighborhood? Not that that neighborhood doesn't deserve it just as much, but it's double the cost, and we're going to pretend like it's not a big deal. Those folks are gone. Well, whose fault was it? And I don't know if there's somebody here who can answer that question tonight. I would hope that there is. And I guess a follow-up question to our current director, and I'm not upset with Shelley, because she wasn't here, she was at the city. It's not her fault by any stretch. But what are we going to do moving forward to make sure that 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, whoever's on the county board then doesn't get hit with, well, now the purchase price is so much more because of X, Y, Z?
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas.
I'd like an answer. That's a question. Since the director done it.
Internally, we are making some changes as far as our budgeting requests go, and spending time as a group really going through those at budget time. So the last two, we have really honed in on what are the costs that are included. This was a huge project that I don't know what was done in the past, but we are laying out all those costs, and we have been looking at all those costs to be included. So we've been getting a lot of those quotes coming in to better this number for this discussion. I don't know that answer. I don't know where the numbers came from. Certainly something I can look into, but I don't know who was part of that discussion team prior to my arrival.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that is inherently the issue. If we still don't know where the numbers came from and how we got to these numbers that were wrong by half, they were half off, twice as much off, depending on how you look at it. We still don't know the answer to that, but now we're being told $30 million is enough. I think, that's essentially what I'm hearing. $30 million is enough, I think. And when it's not, maybe it'll be $90 million, and we're going to go back to those districts, all of our districts, and ask our residents and our constituents to continue putting more on the credit card bill. That's what this is. People like to pretend bonding dollars are they're just regular tax dollars. Sure, we pay them with our tax levy. It's debt. We've taken strides. This county board has taken really good strides in the last 2 years to reduce our debt. And then now tonight, we're going to add a whole bunch more to it. And our hands are tied. The contract's signed, the ink is dried. This was horrible planning, and my question's still out there. We still don't have an answer. We don't know who was in charge, and we don't know today how the numbers were so off. I mean, I heard things reported in the news that we didn't anticipate a parking lot. How do we forget about a parking lot? I've been on this board 6 years, and for 6 years, in the bonding, there's parking lots all over the place. And in that time, there was a park out west, on the west end, where we needed a parking. I think that's where Bristol Woods is today. That parking lot needed to be done. And I went and drove all the way out there. And for those of you who know me well, I don't like driving that far out west. I grew up in the city, I live in the city, I like staying in the city. But I did. And there was one spot that I thought, yeah, this part of the parking lot's pretty bad, it's under a tree. But no, when I talked to the Public Works Director at that time, we couldn't just fix that part of the parking lot, we had to do the whole parking lot. Parking lots are so important in this county. And we forgot this, what might be our biggest parking lot outside of the jail for this project. I mean, that's asinine. And for us to vote on this tonight and still not know where we went wrong, that we're falling short. We fell short a few years ago, we're going to fall short again tonight, and I hope that whoever's on this board in the next few years, when this project comes to fruition, that we're not setting them up to fall short again. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you. My question is how do we be responsible going forward with any other future bonding on discretionary items? And my thought is that we can't approve any discretionary spending for bonding. We can't put this additional 17 million at least burden on the taxpayers and continue to borrow like it didn't happen. It's just not, we would not do that in our own houses, and we can't put this burden on anyone else's house. And if we, in this process, if we are not going to look at our discretionary spending on things that aren't critical, like generators and roofs and sprinkling systems and emergency systems and whatever it might be that are actually critical to the safety and public safety, whether it's on the roads, if it's outside of that, we should not approve any future bonding until we take care of this mismanagement issue that's, I can't say any more than everyone else has said, but we're going to have some difficult decisions to make. We can't just assume, yeah, we're going to agree to this 33 million and we're just going to keep borrowing money and bonding like we have in the past. That would be completely irresponsible. You know, most people in this community are not going to have a clue, but the people in this room do. And we have to be responsible to our constituents that don't pay attention. And, you know, whether it's this board, we start that process in the next few weeks, or it's the next board who has their chance to dig their teeth into it and go from there. But, you know, we cannot continue with any discretionary approval of spending on anything that regards to borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Frego.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Considering all the questions that we're getting tonight in regard to this project, I think it would be helpful if Patty came up and was able to address some of these issues. They were discussed briefly in committee. One of the questions I brought up in committee was the cost control issue and whether the price would be locked in, and I believe it is going to be locked in. But there are a lot of things that I think we're talking about here that Patty could help us with. So if Patty can come up and explain, and Barna too, I didn't see Barna there, maybe they can address some of the questions that are being asked.
I'd like to speak to some of the costs that are listed here. Probably 90% of this is already locked in. So to answer the question about worrying about whether or not this cost is going to double again, 90%, if you look at the detail, the purchase, the original purchase price of the architect fees, phase 1, phase 2, the contingency obviously is an estimate. Vapor remediation is a 99% estimate. Furniture and IT are estimates, and moving is an estimate. So of the 41 million we're talking here, easily 36 to 38 million is locked in. So just to address that point.
At the time that the 17 million was the number, those were estimated figures. These figures, there's actually bids back on them, and the work has begun. So as Barna said, the majority of the costs are locked in at this point. And to Supervisor Franco's point, he asked a question during finance about how do we know that in 7 years when we actually purchase the building, that costs won't go up higher. The lease purchase agreement that was signed was to lease the building for 5 years, but the purchase price is based on the $2.6 million plus the costs of these improvements. So once we move into the building, even though we're renting for 5 years, those costs are locked in. So we will know for sure, and that will not increase over the 5-year rental period until the time of purchase.
The other point I wanted to make too is something that we spoke of in the Finance and Admin Committee, was that in this last year's budget resolution, there was a capital improvement policy manual approved by the county board. And in that policy manual, it dictates that for any large legacy projects like this, the initial resolution would be voted for at that time. There are circumstances for why that was not done the first time, because as has been noted here more than once, that the initial resolution is only good for 5 years, and we knew that going forward that it was going to take more than 5 years for this to get to that point. But going forward, that will happen based on policy. Also, an all-in costs to each project, that is also required. Everything has to be included, furniture, IT. I mean, I could go into lots of detail of why those weren't necessarily included or the thought process behind that. But that is also something that has to be fully vetted before any time a project of this magnitude would come before the board again.
Barnett, can you briefly explain why those things weren't considered initially? Frankly, I don't remember, but help those here in the board to understand that.
To some extent, and we were not necessarily in depth in the project at the onset, but things that have come up like the furniture. So when I stand back and I look at this and say, why didn't we think of furniture? I say, we're in a building, we have furniture. I think there was an underlying assumption that the furniture would move with the employees when we moved into the building. But what has come about, and perhaps John or Mr. Molinaro could speak to this, as they went through their analysis of the project, realized the furniture that we have is 30 years old and is not really going to withstand a move. It's going to fall apart. So that became an issue that wasn't thought of at first, not out of negligence, but out of an underlying assumption that we have furniture. Things like the IT costs. I spoke to the IT director. In other large projects, he used Brookside as an example. IT would be burdened with the cost of the IT for that project. Brookside was the example he used, and he said, we didn't need a lot of drops. When we put in that new addition, there were not many computers, and this IT cost isn't computers, it's the cabling, not necessarily what's going through the ceiling, and I can't really speak to all of that well. However, in this case, we're not talking 6 drops, we're talking 432. So the cost of the IT was far higher than is traditional in one of our building projects. Those are the conversations that we've had, and those to identify some of those unexpected costs.
Thank you.
Anything else, Supervisor Frank? Go ahead, Terry.
Did you call on me?
Yeah, you want the question?
Yes, we have Mark Molinaro, who's the architect, and I'd like to have him elaborate more on this 17 million versus 33 million. I think there's a representative from Bear here as well, and I think we need a little more enlightenment on that. And the question was asked, who was in charge? I want an answer to that.
Okay, let's have the supervisor that did not speak yet, and then we'll have Mark comment on that. Supervisor Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still excited that this is in my district. Obviously, the cost is not the positive part right now, but this fell on 12 of us sitting in here right now. It doesn't fall on who was in charge of the project or any of this. We had all the opportunity to ask the questions. Ms. Billings, I do not want to know who put any of this together, because that's not our world. We don't manage the people. We have management. We have HR to go over this. It's not our responsibility to manage individuals. Are we looking unprofessional? Absolutely, by not having accurate dollars ahead of time. But things have changed, and now that we know that things have changed, I think it's pertinent that we're going to get this, correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, more itemized layout of everything. Thank you. Last thing I'm going to do is start blaming our employees. We're elected. We need to take responsibility for what we do in this boardroom and not what employees do behind their desks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Gersten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I first came on the board, I brought a document that was maybe 7 or 8 pages long that I presented to the administration. And we actually talked a little bit about it when we had our first budget visioning session, which I really loved that visioning session. And I remember getting needled a little bit for being a little obsessive on some of the fiscal policy that I was proposing because I brought that lengthy document. And it took a lot of work by the administration. So we didn't adopt it in the 23 budget, we adopted it in the 24 budget. You heard Barna touch on a couple of the items that this board approved, but there are a lot of other items that we approved. So we approved a significant fiscal update that pretty much encompasses everything, all of the shortcomings of the planning that happened with this project, and a lot more. In fact, we adopted a cap on our debt. We had a couple exceptions, this being one of the exceptions. Another exception is for the shoreline in Lake Michigan. But we really did a good overhaul of our fiscal policy. So the thing I want to say is we did our job. Our job is to adopt policy. We saw this happening and we adopted policy. We moved several notches towards best practices, so I think we're in a better position going forward to so this does not happen again. But the other thing I just want to say is when I brought this into the administration, I had nothing but complete support from at every level of the administration, the county executive, CFO, budget director, everyone else, and I had nothing but complete support when I presented this to the finance committee and the board. So I think it was good policy. I think it is good policy, and I think it does address a lot of the issues that are being discussed and raised tonight. So with that, I thank you very much for giving me the floor to mention that, and I yield.
Thank you. Supervisor Belsky.
I yield back.
Okay, Mark, would you like to answer?
Sure. I was sitting in the back, maybe hoping that I wouldn't have to do this, because as many of you know, I shared this chamber with most of you, or several of you, for quite a long time. And I suspect that I'd be probably far more boisterous than even Mr. Gens has been, Supervisor Gens was this evening, should this issue have come before us while I was here. I can shed some light on it. Supervisor Gertzen mentioned some policy that's been put in place. I don't think you're that far off. I truly don't. In terms of being able to put projects together like this, execute projects like this, and do it in an efficient and comprehensive manner. Where I believe this project went off track was simply where the numbers came from. And when I'm talking about numbers, I'm talking about the cost for the building, the initial projections, which ourselves, and I'm not telling you because I'm trying to cover our tracks in any way, we weren't involved in it. We didn't put together the initial analysis that was done. Bear wasn't involved in the project to put those initial evaluations together, nor was anyone else for the most part here. And even to the, I'll speak a little bit to Mr. Jansen also on how the whole thing came to be, which was an analysis of the existing building. And you had two options that essentially brought that number to bear. The first option was to repair and improve the existing conditions in that building. If you go into Mr. Jansen's office, I think he's got a full bedroom set in there of towels and sheets and everything else, stopping water that leaks in the window. So it would have been taking care of the exterior envelope of the building, new mechanical systems, but generally speaking, no significant upgrades to the interior of the building, which was one number. The other option was to put an addition on the building, and that addition was not to the magnitude of what you're talking about today. In fact, as you were looking at it, you weren't talking about the number of agencies that have been brought on line within the building itself since this project got started. So you can look at added square footage there. When you talk about inflation, we're talking about inflation in costs, we're talking about inflation of services that are provided, which is square footage, and you're talking about inflation of space within that building to support those services that are coming online. It isn't just putting people in there, but it's a space that has to go along with supporting that. So when you put all of that together, let me go back to the initial evaluation, was rehab the building in its current condition, improve the infrastructure that's there in terms of mechanical units, et cetera, or put a relatively small addition on the building. There's no site improvements involved in that other than the footprint of the addition that would be involved. So the parking lot is all there. You don't have any of that. That number was then taken, I think is the $17 million, which was the larger number, which included some addition. There was no furniture involved. They would keep all the furniture they have with the tents over the top of them and the poor lighting and everything else. I don't make a joke of it. I'm telling you, what you were up against was not apples to apples in terms of where that number came from and what you have today. Good, bad, or indifferent, that $17 million number, that project or concept of staying in that location was abandoned. Along came Bear, got us involved. That number was provided. We're working off of a number that was provided by other consultants, architects and consulting contractors, to put all of that together. At no time were any of us aware, inclusive to some degree, I will say, well, I'm not speaking for anybody in the former administration, that was just a number they worked with. And then once you get into looking at a new location, they didn't take into consideration all the factors that come into play with that, regardless of whether it would have been in some of the previous locations that were considered the location that they ended up in. So now you have the reality of what you have in that space you wouldn't build today. If we rebuilt that building today, increased nothing in terms of the quantity of employees that are in there, you wouldn't put them in the square footage they're in right now. You simply wouldn't. They're tighter than, in many cases, tighter than the spaces that you're sharing right now. And they're talking about sensitive information, taking children away from their parents. They're talking about issues involving other social ills within the community that they have to address. All confidential information, and they're literally on top of one another. They don't have the support spaces that they need. So just to house the people you have today, I suspect you'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40+% more in square footage to accommodate it. Then you expand that into the services and agencies that came into the program after the project got moved from where you were at $17 million to where you are now. I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 to 30% more in square footage just in general to accommodate what you have. You pull all of that together, and unfortunately you're in the situation that you're in. These are good general numbers, bid numbers for today. Most of them are solid. I think you're in a good position to be able to bring this in at the cost that you've got out there, and I don't have any real reservations at this point in time that what's presented to you is accurate and factual information. It's just unfortunate that number of 17 million was taken for an apple, and we are certainly not building an apple today. I hope that clarified it. If there's more questions, I'm certainly willing to answer them.
Supervisor Rose,
Any of the other representatives from Bear or like to say anything in addition? I think the explanation is good, and it answers what some of the supervisors think, that we're just being irresponsible, and I think clearly Mr. Molinaro says, no, we're not.
Yeah, thanks, Supervisor Rose. I can maybe shed a little bit more light, and I believe the Supervisor mentioned it with the third option. The third option was going down to the Pick and Save downtown, and that was kicked around a little bit, and As Mark had mentioned, there was a third party that provided numbers far before any of our involvement in the project. Now, we did look at those numbers at 17 million and vet that out on a per square foot basis. We had a very good comp right next door where we built out KHTS, the Kenosha Health Development Services kids, so felt pretty good about where that was at. It was also in 2019. So, I mean, really the crux of it is, and you know, we're not in the furniture business and things like that, but just from a building cost standpoint, the finished floor space has increased about 28% for all of the reasons that were noted and seem very valid. And we have seen, you know, depending on the materials, anywhere between 40 and 60 to 65% cost increases. It's like 70 in steel from 19 to today. It just is what it is. When you take a 28% on top of that 17 million, and then you add 40 to 45%, it pushes us up to that 30 million. You know, we're in the construction business. It is very hard to contend with, and time is really detrimental to deals when you're in a climate like we are. Now, things have leveled off today, but, you know, from 2021, 2022, I mean, it was, you're lucky if you could get the materials, let alone, you know, you just had felt like extortion having to buy this stuff at these rates, but it was what it was. Again, things have leveled off, but we haven't seen prices go down, so now we're just trying to find a little bit of a new normal. As mentioned, I think 70 to 80% of the job is bought out on the construction side already, so feel very good about where we're at from a construction cost standpoint. Don't foresee any unforeseen changes from where we're at right now. There were a few items, vapor mitigation, as Supervisor Nordigan had mentioned, that we've just recently received plan sets on, so that's actively being bid out, but we do have that in the budget and feel comfortable with where we're at. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, I'd like Mr. Jansen to comment on the comparison between what was thought to be the number in 2019, 17 million, and today, so that everybody leaves here understanding that it's not the same thing. We're doing different things, different people, more people. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Mr. Molinaro hit on all those topics already, but really that $17 million number was a very high conceptualized theoretical concept of what it would look like if we move forward out of the building or stayed in the current location that we're at. As Mark has already indicated, that's just not the reality of what we're at right now. If we were to buy or build something for $17 million, we would need another building to fit the other half of our workforce in. So this is what we're looking at. This is really fits the needs of what we currently have, with some space for growth in the future, because you don't want to walk into your building day one and already be at max capacity, but not a lot of space, but enough that as programs expand and needs are coming and going, we're able to meet the needs of our residents. So that's really what this is about. That 17 million is a number that long in the rearview mirror that just doesn't make any sense at this point in time. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, if, Mr. Gens wants to further comment on this or withdraw his comments, and same with some of the other comments I heard, now is the time to do it. But I don't think that those comments are germane and in the context of what we've heard tonight.
Thank you.
So, speak now or never hold peace.
Thank you. Vice Chair Decker.
Obviously, when I heard these numbers, I was in shock, just like all of you. And when that happened, I thought, you know what? I want to go listen to the recordings of those committee meetings, but unfortunately, they're not available. So that being said, Mr. Molinaro brought up some points that I would like to ask, I think, Patty about, and that is the maintenance and the maintenance, or maintaining the building that we are moving into, instead of letting it fall into disrepair like apparently our current human services building is. So, Patty, do we have a plan in place to fund maintenance and keep the new building, once it's in place, up in repair and things like that? What is the plan to save money, so if the windows start leaking, we're not running around wondering how to do that, how to fund this. And then after 30 years of ignoring the maintenance on this building, we just want to move out into a different building after we spent so much money on it.
our plan for maintaining the building is the same as typically is our plan for the county. We have plans in place. We do studies on roofs. We do studies on different maintenance items, and facilities and Public Works bring forward those requests. That's part of your CIP, your capital improvement budget. Typically, parking lots are also one of the things that we have a rotation. We've had studies done, so we're replacing them based on that rotation. This would be part of that.
So what happened with the current Human Services building that we haven't been taking care of it?
I do not know that. According to Supervisor Geertsen and others that I've heard, the building wasn't necessarily in the best of shape from the get-go. The windows that are leaking in Mr. Jansen's office, as I understand it, were interior windows that were taken from the public safety building or the jail. They were extras that we had that were put in. They're not exterior windows, and they're not holding water. That's why he has all those towels and sheets all over his office to catch the rainfall. I can't speak to why any additional repairs were not done. There have been repairs done to the building, but nothing of any huge cost, just enough to keep it maintained.
Okay, thank you. And I hope we're not building this next building like apparently we built the old one.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other supervisor? Okay. Supervisor Nadweski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. I will not retract my comments. I'm not here to place blame on anybody who may have misestimated something before, but we are accountable to the taxpayers of this county. And we can't just keep saying, oops, we made a mistake, we'll just go borrow more money. Oops, we made a mistake, we'll just go borrow more money. If I want to build a house, I go to the bank, they say, how much are you going to loan me? Maybe I spend that much, maybe I don't. But if I go way over budget and I go way over as much as they'll loan me, what do I have to do? I probably have to sell that off somehow or try to get rid of it. I mean, we can't just pull money out of the air on behalf of the taxpayers and say, oops, we made a mistake. So I think it's absolutely and positively appropriate that Supervisor Geertsen talk about the improved policies that we have put in place and that we continue to work toward monitoring this project and other capital projects so that we have more oversight and more accountability. And it's really hard when you weren't here before just to look back and say, how do I hold somebody else accountable? Well, it doesn't matter now. Now we have to hold ourselves accountable moving forward and saying we need to do better. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Carroll.
Thank you, Chairman Nudo. Along the same thread of Supervisor Nedweski saying, how do we hold ourselves accountable and how do we do better? Well, I think that is taking a look at the current budget and making sure that is appropriate. And it sounds like from finance, from the contractor, from the architect, that there's or the developer, I should say, that there's a decent amount of certainty in the numbers that we have. Looking back on the presentation that was sent to us via email, trying to understand the numbers and see where we're at. They do provide some cost comparisons for comparable projects in surrounding communities that appear to show that what the project that's being built for the Human Services is comparable and likely less than the hand-picked per square foot cost of some of these other buildings for the city of Kenosha, Racine County, Milwaukee County. So that leads us to a bit of a conclusion that it is within the cost structure at around in the high $200 per square foot price. The other question that I have is how, and I don't know who generated this contingency, but how was the contingency generated as $3 million? Is that for finance? Is that for the developer? Or who came up with that amount? Through the chair to Director Billingsley or finance.
The $3 million contingency is 10% of the project, which is customary for construction projects.
Okay, so it's strictly a calculation of a number. You know, many times on the construction projects I've been involved with, there's a risk factor, and there's actually specific items that generate a contingency, but this is flat out, hey, on top of everything else, we're putting a contingency on top of that. Do you have any idea of the likelihood of this being used? Is there a factor or percentage that can be assigned with it?
I would say the likelihood of us going through that $3 million, I mean, we're pretty far into the construction, and some of the construction people can speak to that more, but when you tear into an existing building, there's always, you run the risk of what you find underneath, and that generates some of the other things that has been brought up too, of having to put in an additional wall based on some zoning thing, based on what the city is. Those are the sort of things that can be considered in the contingency.
Have those costs already been factored into the Phase 1 and Phase 2 construction costs?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so we've already gone through some of the heartburn and pain of tearing into an existing building, finding out what's inside of it and what needs to be done, including adding the parking lot, which are generally items that are considered contingency right from the get-go.
Right.
So what it's sounding like to me is that the value of the contingency is really just lumped on top of here and not really earmarked for specific items, which tells me that the probability of using that is fairly low at this point.
This dollar amount in totality for the initial resolution is basically a worst-case scenario. We
Okay.
also have plenty of time to also take funding. I've put in budget resolution language that would allow to take surplus at the end of the year. The county board has the option of taking some surplus funds to put towards that, so that over the course of time between now and 2031, when the bill comes due, I'm hoping that we can get a nice sizable chunk.
So reduce our finance costs, in other words?
Correct.
Okay. So all of that is to me, is good stuff, and looking in looking forward from here, it looks like there's a relative high level of certainty of the budget that's before us. We've got, the experts in our finance, we've got the developer, we've got the architect, and we've got our director of public works, all saying that the budget that we have here is sound and conservative. So, and I think the best thing that we can do as a board, as a public works, as a developer, as the building project managers, is to manage that contingency and to make sure that we don't go over where we're at right now. But thank you, that's all. I don't have any further questions.
Supervisor Stock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question that comes to mind, I'm not sure who could answer this, maybe it would be Shelley or Director Jansen. I think the problem that we find ourselves is the trigger was pulled on this project right before COVID and all the increasing costs that we had. I'm curious what would have happened if that can would have got kicked down the road a couple more years and this board was the one deciding on how to proceed. My guess is we probably would have looked at the costs of refurbishing the building that we're in now, and my guess is, I'm not sure if you would know this off the top of your head, if fixing our job center and bringing it back up to speed, building it new furniture, and then comparing that cost with the project that we're considering, would we have made the same decision? Would we have moved forward with this new build, or would we have chosen the pick and save route because it was maybe that would have been a better option with the current rising costs of constructing a building? I don't know. That's just kind of where my head is right now. Obviously, we're looking to borrow more money. I think we need to be very careful with how we proceed with this. I'm definitely confident in what I've heard from the Public Works Department that they're going to do a good job of keeping this under control, but we should be very careful, for what other projects we're approving from now on, just because of the amount of more money that we're borrowing because of this. But I'm not sure that, this board would have made a different decision or not. It's too hard to say because the cost of rehabbing the job center were probably exponentially more than they were back in 2019. So, I will support this, but we all need to be very, very careful how much more money we're borrowing and spending on these type of projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez, I guess you wanted to say something?
Yeah, we still don't have an answer as to whose plate this fell on. And I disagree with Supervisor Berg to say, well, it's solely ours. I mean, the buck stops with us, absolutely. But we hear from each other and from our constituents to trust the professionals that we hire. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a nurse, I'm not in finance. Each of the 23 of us has our career and what we specialize in, and I'd like to think each of us what we do for a living or what we did for a living, we're pretty damn good at it. But we can't do everything. We don't wear all the hats. And our constituents trust us to hire the very best folks to do that job. And that didn't happen. And so I'm looking at the administrative proposal for this project from all these years ago, and there's 4 signatures on it, and I can make out 3 of them, and I can't make out the 4th, and I've asked 2 of my colleagues, and they can't make it out either, so maybe I'll find that out after the meeting. But Jim Kupfer's on there, Jim Cruiser's on there, and Ray Arbitt's on there, and that 4th person that I can't read the signature. Those 3 folks aren't with the county anymore. But I'm curious who that last one is, because we failed our constituents here. And it is our job, but we need to be able to trust our staff, and I do trust our staff, but we need to look at it objectively and say, where did we go wrong? But we heard tonight from our Public Works Director, again, not her fault, she wasn't here, that we still don't know where we went wrong. But trust these new numbers. They're pretty solid, they're pretty concrete. The costs are set, but we don't know where we went wrong. I mean, Supervisor Nedweski was right. You're building your own home, you're taking on your own project. If this happened, and I can't speak for Bear Realty, but just on what I know of their organization or any organization like them, but I'm willing to bet if this happened at Bear Realty or Bear Development, heads would roll. They'd say, where the hell did we go so wrong? And now we're stuck because the ink's dry. And to just say, like Supervisor Burke said, well, oh well, that's wrong. And so I'll be forwarding this document to the board tonight and to the administration, and I'm curious who that 4th signature is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisors?
I want to say something before we...
Okay, already, we should put a stop here. That was the reason why we had the committee of the whole before, send it to committee. Those questions should have been asked before.
Why didn't the chairman of finance call me out in that meeting? I just did, and I think that's a bunch of...
But we're going back and forth. How long are we going to go? You know? Okay. I'm going to clear the board. Anybody else that did not speak before? That was Supervisor Stalker.
Just as a person who pays taxes, it's very frustrating when a big problem like this is created and then nobody's held accountable. I think that's going to be, the people are going to see this and say, what, again? And so I think we need to look into this a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Who else wants to speak? Just turn your lights on and, okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Supervisor Gantz.
Thank you. I'll make this very brief. Okay, I'm not looking to point the finger. I don't think it serves us any purpose to go back and think you're going to lynch somebody from the past, all right? I think the numbers are good now. We've heard the architect, Bear, our finance department all talk to us about the numbers now. I'm not retracting anything I said. This is a big miss. We didn't know there was a laundromat in there, so we didn't know needed the parking lot. There's a lot of stuff that came up. But at this point, it doesn't do us any good to look back and point fingers. I'm not retracting anything I said. And the fact that he would even ask me to is insane. But let's just vote. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chair. I just need a little clarification. Mr. Molinaro said, good chance these numbers are okay. Ms. Merrill said, absolutely these numbers are okay. Which one is it? That caught in my mind. Are these good numbers?
Turn on his mic.
Hard bid numbers. When you talk about the contingency that's in there, if this was a brand-new building ground up, you'd probably have a 5% contingency. Because it's a renovation, you put 10% in there. We're well through much of the demolition, which is where a lot of your issues are. Typically, the larger issues that you uncover at that point, we're largely past that, so the contingency, in my estimation, is very good. I understand what I said, and surprised it took this long for someone to ask me the question. So I have no concerns about these numbers. Again, the majority of what's in there are already hard bid numbers in contracts that have been either let or are being negotiated between Bear and their subcontractors.
So overall, our confidence should be very high that this is where we're going to be.
Well, as I said when I spoke the first time, we were not the architect involved in the original debacle with the original building, which, by the way, to the vice chair, there was two buyers for that building 30-some years ago. I think I was just getting on the board at that time, and those two buyers were either the city or the county. No one else was going to buy that building. So that should tell you, I would never, in my professional opinion, recommend putting any money into that building in its current condition. So that's where I'm at with it on that. But this one will be a long-term building. We are now on the record as the architect of record. I have a reputation to stand behind, as does Bear Development. We support where we're at with this project and the scope that you have currently and the budget that you have. Without question, I don't have any reservations about it.
Thank you, Mr. Molinaro. I'm getting tired. In any case, I also have a question for Mr. Jansen. I need a little bit of clarification on addition of outside providers brought in-house. Does this mean we're bringing service provision in-house, or we're providing facilities for outside providers inside of our new building?
We have a lot of providers that are in our building currently. Some of it is lease space with the state. And a year and a half ago, we took over, brought a program in-house that had about 50 employees that is contracted with another agency, but we are housing them in our building and they would move over with us.
Then they are sublessees, or we're providing, or how is that space allocated? How is it remunerated?
We are not leasing space to them. They're providing a service for us. It's the CCS, Comprehensive Community Service Program, which is Medicaid reimbursement. So the dollars that come in from that program help offset the cost of their being in our building.
Because the continuation of the statement says adding 26 employees to allow our visitors a one-stop visit.
The 26.
This was the white paper, the executive overview.
Which one is the 26?
Second to last bullet point, addition of outside providers brought in-house, adding 26 employees to allow our visitors a one-stop visit.
Thank you, ma'am. I believe that's more than 26 employees, but it's referring to the program I just mentioned.
But it says adding. That, to me, says we're adding payroll, adding bodies, adding headcount.
That's not county employees. That's through a contracted agency at this point in
So
time.
it's contractors that will be working within our facility.
Correct. So it'd probably put us close to 450 people or so in that building.
Okay, that's beneficial. Thank you for clarifying that for me. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Mr. Rose, I didn't appreciate your comment. Thank you very much. Is in my mind inappropriate. We have opinions, we have a voice, we have concerns when there's a 200% overrun on what we were initially confronted with. The other object I would add in there is we are weeks away from an election too, and this is a last minute type of thing. So if it's all so granular and so easy to just look at, one might have thought some of this might have come forward much before the last couple of weeks. So that bothers me. The facility doesn't bother me. In fact, Ms. Merrill, I really appreciated the numbers. This is coming in below, significantly below square foot cost of comparable projects in surrounding counties. that's exceptional. And I'd like to applaud Bear and Molinaro and others for making sure that we can do that. Having I'll call it a state-of-the-art, an appropriate facility for Kenosha County and for our needs, for our citizens' needs, I celebrate that. I think that's fantastic, and I'm really happy that we're moving there. The shock value of that initial number should have been mitigated much before today. The fact that the numbers ran away should have been mitigated with who was accountable, how was it overseen, and what do we do going forward. I thank you to Mr. Gearson for his comments earlier as well. This board did work diligently to put some stopgap measures in place to make sure that these things don't happen in the future. Hopefully they take strong effect and are beneficial to the county as they go forward. So I will support this. I'm just going to hold my nose a little bit. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Franco.
I call the question.
Okay. The question has been called and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? No. I think the ayes have it. Okay, now on the original motion, which again is to approve the resolution, and we need 18 votes, and we're going to have a roll call.
Resolution 108 passes unanimously. Resolution 109 from the Human Services Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Sheila Siegler to serve on the Brookside Board of Trustees. This passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Gens excused.
Supervisor Stuck.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Stuck, second by Supervisor Stoker. Supervisor Stuck.
Yes, quick correction. It was Supervisor Kubicki that was excused. Supervisor Gens was present.
Oh.
I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Supervisor Kubicki was the one excused. Supervisor Gens was present. This resolution is to approve the appointment of Ms. Sheila Siegler to serve on the Brookside Board of Trustees. She did come to the committee and answered some questions from the committee. Her appointment did pass unanimously, and I would encourage the board's approval.
Thank you. Supervisor Franco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't at the committee meeting, I'm not on the committee, but I noticed, often when we go through these forms, it's pretty formulaic. I did notice that she checked yes for, did you have doing business with Kenosha County in the past 5 years? And I did not see any detailed explanation. I'm just curious as to what her connection was with Kenosha County. Now, I don't know if Ms. Siegler is here today to speak to it.
I believe the county clerk.
Can someone address that? I don't know if it was brought up in committee, or I'd like to know.
The county clerk can give you an answer on that.
So the county executive spoke with Sheila to clarify right before the meeting, to clarify what her business with Kenosha County had been, and she was referring to her work with the county as town clerk. She didn't provide a detailed explanation, but that was what she was referring to within the last 5 years.
Okay. I'm not sure that even qualifies as working with the county, but...
Well, she works with me and with the treasurer a lot.
Oh.
So.
Okay. So that's all it was?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other supervisors? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Passes.
Resolution 110 from the Human Services Committee and the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution requesting the purchase of one Pendar X10 spectrometer and 2 TrueNarc analyzers with opioid settlement funds for use by the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisors Kubicki and Grady excused.
Supervisor Stuck.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Stuck, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Stuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution is for the purchase of 3 pieces of equipment total. I was intrigued by their names. I went ahead and Googled them. If anyone is curious, you can just throw them in the Google search and see a video of how they operate. They're basically handheld devices that allow our county staff, namely the Sheriff's Department employees, to be able to test substances to see whether or not they contain harmful substances such as fentanyl or other things without having to physically touch them. As noted in the resolution, there's been some instances where our staff has been exposed. This is using money from the opioid settlement funds to fund these, and they will be used inside the Sheriff's Department for handling evidence. One, I believe, is going to be used out in the field, and the 2 are also going to be used, the 2 smaller ones are going to be used inside the Sheriff's Department. This did pass our committee unanimously, and I would encourage the board to support it this evening. Thank you.
Any supervisor wish to speak? Any supervisor? Seeing none, this requires a 2/3 vote, so we're gonna have a roll call.
Resolution passes unanimously. Resolution 111 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of James Poltrock to serve as a member of the Local Emergency Planning Committee, Group 2 Hospitals. This passed unanimously at committee. Supervisors Nordigan and Franco excused.
Supervisor Bashaw.
Move Resolution 111.
Moved by Supervisor Bashaw, second by Supervisor Rodriguez. Supervisor Bashaw.
This is a resolution to approve the appointment of James Poltrock to serve as a member of Local Emergency Planning. Sergeant Hanna is here, and I believe James was. We're getting late, so yes, he is as well. If there are any questions, they can certainly answer them for us.
Thank you. Any supervisor comments? Any supervisor? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Oppose? Passes.
Resolution 112 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Joseph Potente to serve as a member of the Local Emergency Planning Committee, Group 3 Social Media Representative. This passed unanimously at committee. Supervisors Nordigan and Franco excused.
Supervisor Bashaw.
Move Resolution 112.
Moved by Supervisor Bashaw, second by Supervisor Wemble. Supervisor Bashaw.
Thank you to the committee. I ask your approval of the appointment of Joe Potente to serve as a member of Local Emergency Management. Again, Sergeant Hanna is here, and Joe Potente is also. Joe doesn't have enough to do, so he's asking for a yes vote.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisor? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Passes.
Resolution 113 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, a resolution to approve the regular cabaret license, BB's Pub, 6215 Green Bay Road, Kenosha, in the town of Summers. This passed unanimously at committees. Supervisors Nordigan and Franco excused.
Supervisor Bashaw.
Move Resolution 113.
Moved by Supervisor Bashaw, second by Vice Chair Decker. Supervisor Bashaw.
This resolution is for a regular cabaret license for BB's Pub. Captain Klinkhammer has inspected and presented to the committee. We did ask a few questions regarding the prior incidents report. However, all those incidents occurred prior to this current owner. So I asked for your approval. If you have any questions, Captain Klinkhammer is available.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Passes.
Resolution 114 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, a resolution to approve the regular cabaret license, Premier Wine and Spirits at 32400 Geneva Road, Salem, Wisconsin, in the town of Wheatland. This passed unanimously at committee. Supervisors Nordigan and Franco excused.
Supervisor Bashaw.
Move Resolution 114.
Moved by Supervisor Bashaw, second by Supervisor Belsky. Supervisor Bashaw.
I ask for your support to vote yes on resolution to approve a regular cabaret for Premier Wine and Spirits. Premier has been operating in the community for a short period of time, but they have been very successful and have become quite a nice attraction to have, so I ask for your approval. Captain Klinkhammer is here to answer any questions.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Resolution 115 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee and Finance Administration Committee, a resolution to increase civil process fees. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisors Nordigan and Grady excused.
Supervisor Besha.
Move.
What's your point?
I abstained.
Abstain?
At the committee level, I abstained, yeah.
Okay. We'll let the record show that you're abstaining. Supervisor Besha.
Move Resolution 115.
Moved by Supervisor Besha, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Besha.
Thank you. This resolution is regarding the civil process fees that the county has in place. As it was explained to us by Captain Klinkhammer, these fees have not been addressed for an extended period of time. In fact, we're substantially below surrounding communities, et cetera. Thus, the increases are recommended and were approved unanimously at committee. Any questions? Captain Klinkhammer is here to respond this evening.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? Seeing none? Roll call, please. Did mine go through?
Resolution passes 19 yes, 1 no, and Supervisor Rodriguez abstaining. Resolution 116 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee and Finance Administration Committee, 2023 Grant Award for Year 23 Homeland Security, Wisconsin Emergency Management, HS Alert Bomb Technician Response Equipment, 2023. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisors Nordigan and Grady excused.
Supervisor Besha, let's try it again.
Move Resolution 116.
Moved by Supervisor Besha, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Besha.
This is a Homeland Security grant brought forward for our bomb technicians team, and we unanimously approved accepting $15,000, which will be increasing the levy by 15 as well. So increasing revenue, by $15,000.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? This requires 2/3 vote, so we're going to have a roll call.
Resolution passes unanimously. Resolution 117 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution for the approval of the plat and relocation order for the County Highway W project from Illinois State Line to County Trunk Highway C, and authorized for the Highway Commissioner to acquire the necessary highway right-of-way required for the project in the town of Randall and Village of Salem Lakes. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused, Supervisor Thomas absent.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Nordigan, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is for the County Highway W project that's scheduled to start in 2025 to go out and accept the plat of the piece of property or of the right-of-ways that we need to get to complete the project.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? Vice Chair Decker.
I'd just like to point out in Finance and Administration Committee, because it's kind of light on the resolution, we approved an amendment to remove the last half of the sentence of, and also authorize the Highway Commissioner to acquire the necessary right-of-way required to complete the said project. The Finance Administration Committee did not want to authorize him going out and purchasing right-of-way without county board approval, so.
Any other comments? Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Resolution 118 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution authorizing a lease of Kenosha County property at 1301 85th Street to Square Deal Trees LLC for 2 months for the sum of $250. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused, Supervisor Thomas absent.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Nordigan, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Nordigan.
Yeah, this would be, I believe it's just the second year. We allowed it this past year to sell trees, and I just look for everyone's approval to accept it for this coming year.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? See none? All in favor? Aye. Oppose? No. Okay. Passes.
Resolution 119 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution authorizing the sale of a County Trunk Highway F project remnant to Donna Carroll. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Carroll abstained, Grady excused, Supervisor Thomas was absent.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Nordigan, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Nordigan.
Yeah, after a realignment of County Highway County Highway F, there was 4 pieces of property left over that we want to put back on the tax rolls, and gave first right of refusal to certain property owners that were adjacent to it. This is the first of 2 that are coming up, and I look for everyone's support, and we can get these back up on the tax rolls.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? Supervisor Carroll.
As I did in committee, I'll be abstaining on this.
Okay, so noted. Any other supervisors? Any other supervisors? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Does it need a roll call? It's
Abstain.
got 2/3.
Yeah, sorry. This one is 2/3, so let's have a roll call.
Your abs. You get to work on your abs.
Just looking at 118.
Terry.
Resolution passes 20 yes, 1 abstain from Supervisor Carroll. Resolution 120 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution authorizing the sale of a County Trunk Highway F project remnant to Lance and Abby Gearing. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused and Supervisor Thomas absent.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Move resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Nordigan, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as the previous piece of property was a remnant from the realignment of Highway F, this also is a remnant, and look for everyone's support to sell this piece of property and get it back up on the tax rolls.
Any supervisor comments? Supervisor Rose.
I think it's well to note with the sale of properties here that they are all based upon appraisals, and these are the appraised values.
Okay. Any other supervisors? Any other supervisors? This one requires 2/3 vote also.
Resolution passes unanimously. Resolution 121 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution for expenditure of LRIP funds and reappropriation of Highway K funds to recondition Highway L between State Trunk Highway 31 and 30th Avenue. This passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused, Supervisor Thomas absent.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Move resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Nordigan, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is approximately a little over $900,000 that we're reappropriating that would have been used in the County Highway K, but we have the availability now to use it on County Highway L. And it's in pretty bad shape, L is, and we need to get that back up and to more safer conditions. The LRIP money that this comes from does not jeopardize any future LRIP money, and and the County Highway K project then is going to be budgeted in 2025 process, and we'll reevaluate it at that time. We also have a potential casino that we could get looking at money for as well. So right now, this seems to be the best use of the money, and I look for everyone's support. Thank you.
Hey, Supervisor comments. Supervisor Getz.
I can't go home tonight without knowing what's an LRIP.
What's what?
What's LRIP?
Local road.
Somebody answer.
Local road improvement project.
Thank you.
Program, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel better. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Seeing none, this one requires 2/3 vote also.
Resolution passes unanimously. Resolution 122 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to approve We Energy's permanent easement request within Brookside Care Center. This passed unanimously at both committees, Supervisor Grady excused and Supervisor Thomas absent.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Move resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Nordigan, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is to improve the Brookside, I could be wrong, but it's for the transformer and all that. It's a new transformer that's going in. And then the older easement that they have will be lifted and removed, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah, so that is correct. So we're actually going to be putting in one and taking one out. So look for everyone's approval on this. Thank you.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisors? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Ordinance, first reading to required ordinance 12 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding proposed amendments to the Kenosha County General Zoning and Shoreland Floodplain Zoning Ordinance, adopting the state FEMA Model Floodplain Zoning Ordinance, including the adoption of the new flood insurance rate maps and the new flood insurance study. Communications, 104, communication from Andy Bueller regarding future items scheduled before the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee.
Received and filed.
105, communication from Public Works, a resolution for jurisdictional transfer of part of County Trunk Highway N.
Refer to Public Works.
Claims 20, Darrell Jenkins, personal injury.
Refer to Corporation Council.
The approval of the March 5th, 2024 regular and Committee of the Whole minutes by Supervisor Stocker.
Supervisor Stocker.
Move approval of the minutes.
Moved by Supervisor Stocker, second by Vice Chair Decker. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Moved to adjourn by Supervisor Berg, second by Supervisor Rodriguez. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I always do, because I don't...
We're adjourned.